welcome back. Council of Thrones here, ranking the top episodes from both shows, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. I'm doing this, live reaction, so if I miss some things from the episode, sorry. First one, Winds of Winter, Argue with the Wall. It's a perfect episode. Not much more need to be said. Next is The Spoils of War. This was the Battle of the Gold Road, which was a little underwhelming. It was really just Lannister soldiers getting burned, and it was Dothraki riding through on horseback. Jaime tried killing Daenerys and then was saved by Bronn, so then they somehow swam out of a river in full armor, so I would say it was a good episode. I wouldn't say it was much else. Blackwater, this one was amazing. Obviously, Battle of Blackwater Bay. The Hound abandons Joffrey. Tywin saves the day with the Tyrells, as usual. Tyrion almost gets killed because Cersei plotted against him. Bro is not living his good life after this episode, but it was an amazing episode. The CGI, the fights. The children, wasn't a huge fan of this episode. I have a bias for Lannisters, and we lost Tywin in this episode, and we lost the Hound in a fight that I think he should have won, but that's another story. Arya goes off on her own. She sails for Essos after Brienne loses her. Jaime obviously helps Tyrion out, who kills Tywin, which is super unfortunate, so not a fan. Next, we have Mother's Mercy. This is when Cersei used to do a Walk of Atonement. Kind of a weird episode. Didn't feel like a season finale. She gets the Zombie Mountain, who I think in the books has a different name, which is kind of weird, but he becomes the newest member of the Kingsguard. So again, I think it was an okay episode. It was just kind of there. First House of the Dragon episode. This is the pilot, The Heirs of the Dragon. Not a huge fan of Rhaenyra, I think her name is, so already my bias for the show is pretty strong. I wasn't a huge fan of her character. I like Daemon, and I like Viserys is cool. This was a good episode. I don't think there's anything crazy about it. We Light the Way. This was the wedding night. This was Rhaenyra and Laenor, and then Kristen Cole killed Laenor's lover, which was just a super intense scene. They got married right in the hall after everyone cleared out. This was the throne room, actually. The guy's blood, I forgot his name, but his blood was still on the floor. I enjoyed this episode. I would say it was amazing in my eyes. And also Alicent wore the Hightower green dress. Lord of the Tides. This was Viserys' last time on the throne. He also walks into the throne room. This was that super cool scene. He defends his daughter's claim and his grandson's claim to the throne and to Driftmark after the Hightowers tried to foil his plan. This episode was also, I would say, it was amazing. Season 1 finale of House of the Dragon, The Black Queen. I really didn't like this episode. I feel like this just could have been a placeholder in season 2 to help them get to 10 episodes. It definitely didn't feel like a finale, so pretty underwhelming. Everyone's favorite episode, The Lion and the Rose. This is Joffrey's death. Everyone thought it was Tyrion after, just up to the way Joffrey treated him, and then he picks up the cup when Joffrey points. Sansa makes her escape. This is when we figure out Littlefinger was scheming against the Lannisters the whole time. I don't remember what happens really with Daenerys or anyone else in this episode, but obviously the wedding was the biggest part. We saw a lot of cool interaction between Tywin and Olenna Tyrell. this is kind of like the male-female counterparts of who they are as characters, which was really fun to watch. So I would say that was a good episode. Hard Home, this was when we really saw the Night King and the army of the undead for the first time. I mean, this plan from Jon was really stupid, trying to save everyone, and then they ended up losing more people to the army of the dead. You know, people could say, oh, it would have happened anyway, but I don't know, that's not how it went down the show, and what we saw, I wasn't a huge fan. And then this ends up costing him his life later, so it was a decent, the visuals were amazing, so I would say it was an okay episode for that. The Door, that was, I really wasn't a fan of Hodor to begin with. He was just indifferent to me. We just kind of saw into his life, how he became Hodor, which is weird. Bran was pretty much able to change the past, which dictated his own future, which, obviously it's part of the Green Seer thing, but I wasn't a huge fan of that plotline. This episode was super iconic. This is when people, at least for me, this is when I got hooked on Game of Thrones. Ned's execution, which was super shocking. I always thought he was going to get out alive last minute, but this is also an amazing episode. Arya helps, she runs away, goes into hiding. The Lannisters massacre the Northmen. I mean, it was a brutal episode. Battle of the Bastards. This episode was amazing. Ramsay Bolton finally gets what was coming to him for a while. Jon gets some delicious vengeance, and so does Sansa. She gets to help kill him with his hounds. Knights of the Vale obviously ride into victory, quote unquote, thanks to Littlefinger, but I would say this episode was perfect though. Season 6 at the end was just on something. Here we have the pilot, Winter is Coming. This episode kind of felt separate from Game of Thrones. I know they refilmed the pilot, maybe that was part of it, but this almost felt like a different show, but I did enjoy it. We meet all the big characters, Jaime, Cersei, Robert, all the Starks. It was really cool. Kind of just seeing, comparing it to later seasons, how simple everything was, so to speak, before the war. Obviously, at the end, Bran gets pushed out of the tower, which starts everything, but definitely an amazing episode. And then we have the Red Wedding, this was probably more shocking than Ned's death. Obviously, this was the biggest part of the episode. The war is effectively over at this point. Stannis is in ruins, and now Robb is dead. The entire North is dead. I mean, Brynden Tully escapes the Blackfish, but that was really it. This is when we figure out that the Boltons, the Freys, and the Lannisters have been plotting together. It's not really established for how long, but it's at least a season, because we see Tywin writing all those letters, and we never knew what they were. And then obviously we figured out they were going to Roose Bolton. So this was also an amazing episode. Fire and Blood. This was when Daenerys got her dragons. The season 1 conclusion. Not much really happened besides that. Obviously Drogo died because the witch couldn't bring him back. She lost her child because that was the unnamed sacrifice, and in turn she got her dragon eggs to hatch. Kind of weird. The Khalasar just left her, instantly when Drogo died. To me, it was an okay episode. I wasn't really I didn't enjoy it that much. The Mountain and the Viper, this was sick. I mean, we finally got the third and final mountain actor, so we kind of could put a face with a name. Oberyn got ahead of himself, clearly. Did a little too much shit talking, part of my language, and cost him his life. I do enjoy the underlying point of the episode. He was trying to frame Tywin for the crimes when they sacked King's Landing at the end of the rebellion, which was a really cool part. But obviously, you know, he never got his truth because he got his head crushed. So that also was an amazing episode to me. And then we have the laws of gods and men. This is when Tyrion had his crash out at the trial. Shay plots against him with Tywin. You know, we find out later he was sleeping with her, which is super awkward. But then he has his monologue wishing death on all the High Lords and how he should have he wishes Joffrey were still alive to, you know, torture them and be malicious. And then he demanded a trial by combat, even though Jaime had struck a deal with Tywin to let him live, go to the wall, and then Jaime would have gone to Casterly Rock and been relieved as a Kingsguard. This episode was crazy, watching just his emotion when he was telling everyone at the trial how he really felt. And obviously it did end up costing him his relationship with his dad and his relationship with everyone at King's Landing and his status as a Lannister. But this was a perfect episode to me because really of the dialogue. So here's my final rankings. You know, not perfect, but this is all, you know, off the top of the head opinions from me. You know, again, this is TV show knowledge. I haven't read the books. I don't plan on it, to be honest. So what you see is what you get with these episodes. So thank you for checking it out, and stay tuned for the next one.